Good morning. Today we're going to get into the 16th chapter of the Gospel according to Luke on our Advent journey. It's an interesting chapter. It begins with this parable that's known as the parable of the shrewd steward, which is very, very odd. At least it sounds very odd to us because there's this steward who is apparently is labeled as dishonest, that he's swindling his master, and he's being fired for it. Now, we don't know if this is actually true or if he's just accused of it and is being dismissed for it. But he decides to try to save himself, or at least prepare a future for himself, by reducing the debts that are owed to his master by other large operations around town so that they'll take him in once he is fired and support him until he gets his feet on the ground again. Which is odd because at the end of it, Jesus seems to say, "For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes." Now that seems like Jesus is saying, make friends through dishonest wealth with shady characters so you can get covered. But that doesn't really strike, that doesn't really sound right. It sounds out of place to us, like Jesus is telling us to do wrong. I don't think that's the case here, because later in the chapter we have the story of a rich man and a person who begs at his gate named Lazarus. Both die. Lazarus goes to heaven, and the rich man goes to Hades, it says, and suffers. And there he calls out for Lazarus to be sent by Father Abraham to come quench his tongue while he's being tortured. And Abraham says, "No, you didn't take care of Lazarus while you were alive. Why should Lazarus can't come to you now that you are dead?" And the rich man responds, "Well, then send Lazarus to my family, to my surviving brothers, so that they know what they're supposed to do, that they should take care of the poor and won't wind up like me." And Abraham says, they have the prophets. They have Moses and the other prophets to tell them the same story. They should already hear that and know it. And even if someone comes from the dead, they won't know. They won't listen. So I think the key here, and this is a very confusing story, back to the shrewd steward. It's a very confusing story, and I may not be right on this one, but I think what Jesus says, make friends for yourselves. The types of people that Jesus wants you to be friends with are the oppressed, the poor, sinners, the downtrodden. Using whatever wealth you have gained in order to make friends with the poor, by forgiving debts, by giving money without expecting interest, whatever ways that you can to make friends with the poor, I think is what Jesus is calling for here. But it's very convoluted, and I'm not exactly sure on that. But that seems to track with the other stories that we have read in previous chapters. And remember, in the first chapter, in the prologue, the author says that he is writing a well-ordered account, that basically the pieces of the stories relate to each other as they are laid out. So if Jesus is saying make friends with the poor via your wealth, which is always dishonest, then that tracks with what the other themes that we have seen in the rest of the book. Again, I'm not sure. This is a convoluted story and it's very complicated. I even took a look at some commentators at what they said about it, and it seemed they didn't have much sense out of it either. So I invite your comments and thoughts. If you have any ideas about what's going on here, I would be interested in hearing them. But it is a very interesting chapter indeed. Tomorrow we'll get into the 17th chapter as we continue our journey. We're getting ever closer to Christmas Eve, the last day of this series. And then we'll ring in Christmas and the incarnation of God in the person of Jesus Christ. I hope you have a gracious day, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow.